So I know you have a couple stories about being at the Olympics, running through airports, driving up on sidewalks with particular runners. Do you want to get into details on that story?
Well, I think you're talking about 1988. Ben Johnson was running in Seoul, and Brian Marshall, my high jumper, was competing on the same day. The qualifying round is when the heats were on in the 100 meters, and his high jump final was the same day as Ben Johnson's 100-meter run. I was the head coach of the World Junior team, so I couldn't stay at the Seoul Olympics. I didn't have any more holidays left, so I was only there for 3 days. Flew over to watch Ben run and Brian jump. And then the next day, shopped like crazy because it was Korea. And I came back with 19 shirts and 3 suitcases and 2 pairs of shoes and a raincoat. And that's quite the place to shop. Anyway, then I was flying home, and I was on a plane, and 17 hours from Seoul to New York, and a couple hours into the flight, this kid comes down the aisle, and he said, "Dad, I got Ben Johnson's autograph. He's up in first class." And I thought, what? So I got up and I went up.
How could he be sitting in first class and I'm back here?
No, what happened is in the morning I went to the airport early to head back and to check in, and everybody surrounded me because here I am in a Canada sweatsuit, and they went, "Are you Charlie Francis?" And I went, "No, I'm not Charlie Francis." And where's Ben Johnson? I have no idea where Ben Johnson is, but everybody knew he was trying to get out of Dodge as fast as he could. So all the media bought tickets and got on the first flight out. And when the doors were closing and they realized Ben wasn't going to get on the plane, they all jumped off, cashed their tickets in, bought tickets on the next flight. And this went on for about 5 flights. And then the one to New York, which is a direct flight, same thing happened. And when they saw the doors closing, they all got off and the doors closed. But what happened is we went out on the runway. I certainly didn't notice, but we stopped as we were taxiing, and then we took off. And so I went up and I said, "Ben, how did you get on this airplane?" I knew him well, obviously, because we traveled for years together. Charlie always kept his people in one hotel, and I was with the field event people in another hotel. We saw Ben getting bigger and bigger, but he kept getting drug tested. But it wasn't until years later that we found out that he was on stanozolol, which was a drug that they had no test for. So Robert Dugal created the test. He was a guy from the Montreal lab, Canadian, and he showed up in Seoul with the stanozolol test, and they caught Ben. But anyway, we're on the airplane, and he said, well, they're afraid they'd wreck the airport. So what they did is they, as the plane got out, started to taxi, they stopped and they put the stairs out, and Ben got on with his mother and his sister and the badass doctor, Jamie Astafan, and his wife, and all his luggage. So they brought the stairs out, they got on the plane, took the stairs away, and away they went. So when we got to New York, Ben said, "Would you help me with my luggage and stuff?" Because we had to bring all our luggage right onto the plane. Well, his mother's a big woman. And so I said, "Sure, I'll help you." So there I am carrying his bags and helping his mom, and here we are on world television. And my dad's at home watching TV like everybody else, going, "What the hell's my son got himself into now?" Because I had the Canadian uniform on, which the World Junior uniform was the same as the Olympic uniform. Anyway, we got out, and Astafan's brother had a car, and I said to Ben, "You stay here. I'll get your mom and your sister in the back seat, get all the luggage in the trunk. I'll schlep all this stuff out, and then you come out at about 4 or 5 minutes later, and you just run. I'll have the door open. You jump in the car, and we'll head from LaGuardia to Kennedy, and then you can fly up to Toronto." And that's what we did. And the media were so rambunctious. There were so many of them. They tore the doors right off the front of the airport, broke the glass windows, trying to get at Ben and trying to get the story.
Holy shit.
And we ran out, got in this car, and we raced down the road exiting the airport, and Astafan hit the curb, and the car jumped up on the grass. I thought he was going to roll a bloody car. Yelling at him to slow down.
Yeah, and that's okay. You can swear on here.
Slow the fuck down.
There we go.
And I thought could have gotten killed. And he, anyway, we got back down on the road, and And there we are driving. We're driving and all these yellow cabs chasing us all the way to the airport. So when we got to the other airport, Ben had a flight to Toronto, but we had a few hours to kill, and so the media were everywhere. So I took him into the Air Canada Lounge, and all the media bought tickets to be members of Air Canada Lounge, and they came in. So then I had to move them to American Airlines. Then I had to move them to United Airlines. I just kept moving them around the airport, trying to keep the people away from them, because there was just a mob scene. I mean, it was quite an incident when, unfortunately, when Ben got caught. They didn't catch the other guys in that race. I think Ben was
one of many.
In some respects targeted.
Really?
You know, the head of. No, there's some of it is it can't be proven, but the head of doping at the time was an East German, and he was quoted as saying, there were 100 positive drug tests in Rome at the track and field world championships in '87, and the Olympics were in '88, and they said the sport was out of control. We had to do something. And here was a guy who was one of the best in the world, but he was black, had a speech impediment, and he was from a country we knew wouldn't support him, wouldn't defend him. And Ben gets caught, and we go through the Dublin inquiry and all this hand-wringing. And I was at Sport Canada at the time, and the minister was pissed that this happened and blamed Sport Canada, and that started the downfall of the government structure for high performance, and they set up these other systems with groups like Own the Podium and Road to Excellence being third party groups, so that if the shit hit the fan again, it wouldn't reflect on the minister and the government. It'd be these third parties. That's the way the government works.
Wow. Wow. Crazy. So you were Ben Johnson's entourage for a couple days there.
Well, and, you know, Ben got persecuted. He was left by his own. Very few people know that when he came to Canada from Jamaica with his family, his dad was a beekeeper and raised bees in Jamaica. And when he came to Canada the first winter, he almost died of pneumonia. He couldn't handle the Canadian winters at all. So every winter, he went back to Jamaica and raised his bees. And Ben's mother cleaned houses and basically was a breadwinner. So when Ben started running and making money, it was very easy to see that he could be manipulated into being the fundraiser for the family. But when the Dublin inquiry happened and everybody vacated Ben, his dad came back and spent that winter with him. And got pneumonia and died. So that was a pretty tough time. That was a pretty tough time for Ben and those of us who knew the sacrifice. Anyway, then we ended up with a doping program, and then Ben, he had one break, I guess. Very few people know this, but Gaddafi came to him and said, everybody knows you're an amazing runner. I'd like you to come and train our soccer team. And they gave him $300,000. Well, they gave him a lot of money for a month to train that soccer team. And Ben came to Ottawa, and I wrote up his CV for him and just some background stuff. And he sent all this stuff over, and he quietly went over there and coached their team for a month.
Wow.
And then he got talked into some really stupid promotional things about cheetahs, and he raced a horse in PEI for money, just for the hell of it, because he had such a fast start.
Yeah.
But he's still in Toronto, and I still think there's a story to be told there. I'm working on an academic paper on the whole drug scene from the 80s. It all started in 1983 when we had two weightlifters caught at the Pan American Games in Caracas, Venezuela. And anyway, I'm working with a real expert, Dr. Ian Ritchie at Brock, and hopefully we're going to put together a really good paper on all that stuff.
I'm very excited to hear that, and thank you for sharing that.